Welcome to Life Stories, where small acts of kindness lead to life-changing moments. Today's story begins with a billionaire stranded in a storm, frustrated and helpless until three selfless teenagers stop to help him, asking for nothing in return. Their simple act of generosity sets off an unexpected journey of gratitude, purpose, and transformation. What happens next will surprise you and remind us all of the power of giving. Subscribe to Life Stories to start today's journey and discover how one good deed can change lives in ways we never imagined. The storm had been relentless for hours. Dark clouds loomed over the highway like an endless sea of grey, swallowing any trace of sunlight. Rain pounded on the roof of my sleek black Mercedes, each drop a sharp reminder of the miserable weather and my already crumbling schedule. The windshield wipers swished furiously, struggling to keep up with the downpour, but visibility was still a challenge. I was on my way to New York City, where I was expected to sign a billion-dollar deal, one that could further cement my name among the financial elite. Time was of the essence, and I had planned everything down to the minute. Yet, as always, life had its own agenda. The first sign of trouble came with a violent jolt. A loud boom echoed through the air, and within seconds, my car swerved dangerously to the right. I gripped the wheel tightly, heart hammering against my ribs. As I fought to regain control, the car groaned in protest before finally rolling to a shaky stop on the narrow shoulder of the road. "Damn it," I muttered under my breath, slamming my hands on the wheel. The dashboard flickered, and the warning light confirmed what I already suspected: a blown-out tire. With a heavy sigh, I reached for my phone, hoping to call roadside assistance. No signal. Of course. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, I was completely alone, stranded with nothing but the howling wind and sheets of relentless rain. I pushed open the car door and stepped outside, instantly regretting it. The cold rain soaked through my tailored suit in seconds, chilling me to the bone. The wind whipped around me, sending sharp gusts of icy air against my face. I made my way to the trunk, opened it, and stared at the spare tire. Changing a tire? That was something I had never done in my life. I had people for that. I ran a hand through my damp hair, frustration mounting. My entire life revolved around control, calculated moves, precision, efficiency. And yet here I was, helpless on the side of a deserted road, watching the minutes slip away. If I didn't make it to the city on time, the deal could fall through. More than just money was at stake: my reputation, my influence, my standing among the most powerful figures in the industry. I exhaled sharply, the sound of my breath nearly drowned by the rain. Then, just as I was beginning to accept my fate, I heard something unexpected: laughter. At first, it seemed impossible. Who in their right mind would be out in this weather, let alone laughing? I turned, squinting through the rain, and saw three figures on bicycles pedaling toward me. As they drew closer, I could make out their faces: three teenage boys, their raincoats splattered with mud, their expressions carefree despite the storm. The tallest of the three, a boy with curly hair and a worn-out blue raincoat, called out, "Hey, mister, need some help?" For a moment, I hesitated. My instinct was to politely decline, to maintain my composure and not appear desperate. But the reality of my situation left little room for pride. "Yeah," I admitted, gesturing toward the damaged tire. "Got a flat." Not exactly my area of expertise. The boy in the blue raincoat grinned. "No problem. We got this." His two friends, one with a red hood and the other wearing thick glasses fogged up from the rain, nodded eagerly. "You sure?" I asked, skeptical. "We've done this loads of times," the boy assured me. "Well, mostly on bikes. But it's the same idea." I stepped aside, watching in astonishment as they sprang into action. One of them fetched the jack and wrench from my trunk, while another steadied the car. The tallest, who seemed to be their leader, crouched down and started loosening the lug nuts with the ease of someone who had done this before. "You don't mind getting wet?" I asked, my voice tinged with both curiosity and guilt. "It's just rain," the boy with glasses shrugged. "We're already soaked anyway." Their teamwork was seamless, each one knowing their role without needing instructions. Despite the storm, they worked with light-hearted energy, chatting and joking as if this were just another ordinary afternoon. I found myself watching them, something stirring deep within me, an unfamiliar warmth, a strange sense of admiration. These boys, who had no reason to help a stranger, were doing so without hesitation, without expectation. After only 20 minutes, the new tire was securely in place. The leader stood up, wiping his muddy hands on his raincoat with a satisfied grin. "Done," he announced proudly. I stared at the car, then at them, almost in disbelief. "You really pulled it off," I said, shaking my head in amazement. I reached into my wallet, pulling out a wad of crisp bills. "Here, take this. You've earned it." But to my surprise, the boy simply waved it off. "No need, mister. We were just passing by and thought we'd help." His friends nodded in agreement. "Besides, you need to get to where you're going," one of them added. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. I wasn't used to kindness without a price tag, without some ulterior motive. "You sure?" I asked again. "It's the least I can do." The boy smiled and shook his head. "We're sure. Just drive safe." "Okay." And just like that, they hopped back on their bikes, pedaling away into the rain, their laughter fading into the distance. I stood there for a long moment, watching them disappear into the storm. For the first time in years, I felt something I couldn't quite name, something beyond gratitude. Climbing back into my car, I glanced at the dashboard clock. There was still time to make it to my meeting. But as I drove off, it wasn't the billion-dollar deal that occupied my thoughts. It was those three boys. Their selflessness, their unwavering kindness, and the feeling that, somehow, they had changed something in me. The storm had begun to ease by the time I reached New York City. The towering skyline loomed ahead, shimmering against the wet pavement, a stark contrast to the desolate road I had been stranded on just an hour earlier. I pulled up to the glass skyscraper where my meeting was being held. The valet rushed toward me, umbrella in hand, but I waved him off, stepping out into the lingering drizzle. My suit was still damp from the rain, my shoes slightly muddied from the roadside. But I didn't care. Inside, the conference room was buzzing with quiet intensity. My team was already there, shuffling papers, their faces etched with concentration. At the far end of the long mahogany table sat the investors, polished, unreadable. I took my seat at the head, straightened my tie, and launched into my pitch. Normally, this was where I thrived. I had spent years perfecting the art of negotiation, of reading the room, of knowing exactly when to press and when to pull back. And yet, something felt different today. As I spoke, my mind kept drifting. I saw flashes of their faces, Jordan, Marcus, and Elijah, soaked to the bone, laughing as they worked together to fix my tire. I could still hear their voices, the easy way they had brushed off my money, their genuine willingness to help without expecting anything in return. It was unsettling. I faltered once, then twice. My team shot me confused glances. I was known for my sharpness, my ability to command attention. Yet today, my usual precision felt muted, clouded by something I couldn't quite define. Somehow, I made it through. The deal was signed. The handshakes exchanged. The congratulations murmured. Yet as I sat there, watching the investors file out, I felt no sense of victory, no rush of satisfaction. Instead, I felt empty. Later that evening, I sat alone in my high-rise office, the city stretching out before me in a sea of lights. My desk was stacked with contracts, Emails demanding my attention blinked on my screen. Yet I ignored them all. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. In my world, everything had a price. Generosity was often calculated a tool for networking, for influence, for getting ahead. But those boys had helped me simply because they could. Because it was the right thing to do. It had been years since I had seen kindness like that. I thought about who I had been at their age, driven, ambitious, but also struggling. I hadn't come from wealth. I had built everything from the ground up. Clawed my way into this life with sheer determination. Somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that success was about control, about power, about never needing help from anyone. Yet, in the pouring rain, 3 kids had reminded me of something I had long forgotten. I owed them more than a simple thank you. That night, as I lay in bed, I made a decision. I was going back to Fairview. Not just to see them again, but to do something that actually mattered. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. The city was still draped in a misty grey, the remnants of last night's storm lingering in puddles along the sidewalks. But unlike the day before, I wasn't in a hurry. For the first time in years, my schedule was clear because I had cleared it myself. No urgent meetings, no calls, no negotiations. Just one destination, Fairview. Dressed in casual clothes, a navy sweater and dark jeans. A stark contrast to my usual tailored suits, I stepped into my car and began the drive back to the small town. As the towering buildings of New York faded behind me, I found myself thinking about Jordan, Marcus, and Elijah again. Their energy, their laughter, the way they had worked together so effortlessly. They hadn't hesitated to help me. They hadn't asked for anything in return. And that had left a mark on me in ways I still didn't fully understand. The roads became quieter as I neared Fairview. The highways gave way to rolling fields. And the scent of rain lingered in the crisp air. It was a place that felt untouched by the urgency of the world I knew, a place where people still stopped to talk to their neighbors. Where life moved at a slower, more deliberate pace. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to the boys when I found them. All I knew was that I needed to see them again. It didn't take long. I found them outside a modest diner on Main Street. Their bikes propped against the wall as they laughed over breakfast. They looked just as carefree as they had the day before. But there was something more in their faces, something strong. Resilient. Jordan was the first to notice me. "Hey, it's the guy from the highway," he called out, nudging his friends. The other 2 turned, their faces lighting up in recognition. "Hey, Mr. Marcus greeted, his tone casual but friendly. "Car holding up okay?" I chuckled, nodding. "Thanks to you 3. Yeah." I hesitated for a moment, then motioned toward the bench outside the diner. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" The boys exchanged glances, then shrugged in unison. "Sure," Elijah said, scooting over to make room. I sat down, suddenly feeling out of place. Here I was, a billionaire in a small-town diner, sharing a table with 3 kids who had done something for me that no amount of money could buy. "I wanted to thank you properly," I began. "You didn't have to help me yesterday, but you did. And it meant more than you know." Jordan grinned, brushing off my words. "It was no big deal. You looked like you needed a hand." Marcus nodded. "Yeah. Besides, we were already soaked. Figured we might as well do something useful." I laughed, shaking my head. "You 3 have more generosity than most people I've met in my entire life." Elijah leaned back, arms crossed. "It's just what you do, right? Help someone out when they need it." I studied them for a moment, their sincerity catching me off guard once again. They were right. It was simple. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small notebook I had brought with me. "I know you didn't do it expecting anything in return," I said carefully. "But I want to do something for you. For all of you." The boys looked at each other. their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. Like what? Jordan asked, his tone measured. I hesitated, then offered. How about I fix up your bikes? Or get you something you've been wanting for a while? Something practical. Think of it as my way of showing my appreciation. Marcus frowned, shaking his head. You don't have to do that. Mister. We're good. Elijah nodded. Yeah. We weren't looking for a reward. I raised a hand, smiling. I know. But this isn't about rewards. It's about paying forward the kindness you showed me. Let me do something for you. Jordan hesitated, glancing at his friends. Well, he trailed off. Then finally spoke. There is something. Marcus and Elijah shot him curious looks as he continued. There's this community center we hang out at sometimes. It's kind of falling apart. Leaks in the roof. Old equipment. They've been trying to raise money to fix it up. But it's slow going. I leaned back, considering this. A community center. That sounded like something worth helping with. Jordan nodded. It's where a lot of kids go after school. It's important to the town. If you really want to do something, Marcus added, maybe you could help them out instead of us. I looked at them, a deep sense of admiration swelling in my chest. These boys weren't just kind, they were thoughtful. They weren't looking for personal gain. They were looking out for their community. I smiled. Standing up. You've got a deal. The boys grinned, their excitement tempered by humility. Thanks. Mister. Jordan said, extending a hand. I shook it firmly, looking at the three of them with newfound respect. No, I replied, my voice steady. Thank you. You reminded me that the world could use more people like you. As I walked back to my car, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about giving back anymore. It was about something bigger. Something that mattered. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The renovations began swiftly. Within weeks, the Fairview Community Center was completely transformed, new roof, fresh coats of paint, modern equipment, and a safe, welcoming space for the children of the town. Jordan, Marcus, and Elijah were there every step of the way, watching in awe as their vision became reality. On the grand reopening day, families gathered, laughter filled the air, and the boys beamed with pride. As I stood beside them, watching children play on the new playground, I realized this was more than just a project. It was a reminder that kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples far beyond what we imagine. I had come to Fairview expecting to give, but I left having received something far greater, a renewed sense of purpose. If this story inspired you, subscribe to Life Stories for more heartwarming tales of kindness and transformation.